At this time, we will call the meeting to order, and we will begin with agenda item number 2, public comment. Are there any written comments submitted?
No.
Are there At this time, then, we will close public comment and move on to number 3, which is approval of the minutes. And if you've reviewed those, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve.
And is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Not opposed, but I will abstain since I was not at the meeting.
Okay. Then the motion passes. Now we will move on to item 4, workshop. Item A, item A, review of and discussion on animal shelter and community engagement. Cindy King. Oh. Sorry. Are we,
That's
the first. Oh, I put the slides in the wrong order. Just skip.
three slides down.
I didn't realize that was first. Yeah, I normally that one's first, so I didn't even realize that. Okay, we can just take them out of order then, Cindy. We'll let Rob, or we'll let Dawn go, or Rob's here.
Confusing the purpose.
Okay,
Okay. So Rob, you're up.
so
You're up.
I move that we take the items out of order. I think Rob's gonna do it since he's here. Dawn was.
so review and discussion on a new animal shelter facility. Rob Valenzuela.
And Dawn will jump in too. So we'll go ahead and get started. And real quick, just want to give a quick update on where we're at and what are we doing? There's a lot of things moving around this topic right now. To even include fundraising at that. And I think Kimberly will come up later to talk through some of that as well. And so back in January, we're March now. January 24th, 25th, we had Animal Arts back out. So Animal Arts is working with PJL. They came back out to the site. They toured, they had stakeholder meetings with Jennifer and Cindy, as well as some of our engineering folks from an infrastructure standpoint. We had them tour 5 potential sites, alternative sites. So one of the things that we talked about last time was the police department site was kind of the original site, but are there better spots for them throughout the city? We toured them to 5 additional sites. And so the 5 sites we looked at, see if I can remember them all. We went to Eldridge Park, the property out there, and looking to see how can we integrate it into the park. We went to Oyster Creek Park. There again, how can we integrate it into there? We looked into some property that the city bought adjacent to the Public Works campus. It's over off Lakefield, kind of at the corner of Lakefield and Gillingham.
Lakeview.
Or Lakeview, sorry, yes, Lakeview Water Plant. Lakeview and Gillingham, that was the third. And then the fourth one was
The actual.
Imperial.
yes, we went to the PD site, we toured that one. And the 5th one was one that Kimberly was riding with us that day, and she goes, what if we looked at the Imperial Park? Which is where this girls softball fields are at, and can we incorporate it into there? And so we looked at those 5 potential sites. And then before they left, they had, like I said, a workshop item with staff to look at what's the market doing today with respect to animal shelters? What are the best practices? What does our market need at the most currently? Looked at also some of that initial programming. Y'all had done a ton of work before, previous 2 times, I believe, through the programming. A lot of that goes back to some of the programs that we're now utilizing as well, and what are those spaces that we're going to need. We started getting back some drafts. We had some discussion with them, I guess about 2 weeks ago now, maybe a week ago. That was centered around the 5 locations that we had them look at. Some just didn't work. You know, the footprint didn't work, or infrastructure wasn't there. And so there was probably 1 or 2 sites that just fell out. There has been some that kind of bubbled up and said, maybe some of these do make sense. And so they're taking a look at that now to see, from a drainage standpoint, do we got to build a detention pond? Do we not? Are the utilities there? Do we need to put parking lots in, or can we utilize the existing parking lots, parking spaces, and save some dollars to help with the building at the end of the day? They are now running through that scenario with us, trying to figure out what are our top 3 locations, if you will, and what are the advantages of putting, having it sited at either of those locations so we can make a recommendation and move forward with it. And so still a lot of planning work, a lot of estimating going on as to what are the requirements. Some of those areas, like the police department area, that falls within the First Colony area, and so you have to follow the First Colony HOA restrictions. Some of those areas don't fall within an HOA, and so you have some more flexibilities to do what you want to do with the building. And so some of those things they're working through to understand those better, to help reflect that in the cost as well. And so hopefully we can get those nailed down here in the next couple of weeks. And so by our next board meeting, hopefully we'll have those decisions kind of buttoned up to.
You said you already deleted 2.
Dawn's online, and Clarence, I think, has it going too. So yeah, so I wouldn't say that we deleted them. They just kind of fell down on our priority list. They're still on the list, but they're kind of at the bottom. It's one of those that it doesn't make any more sense to put any more work into. But it was more of, let's focus on those top ones instead of those bottom ones. There we go. And so, like I said, we'll bring Kimberly back up and she can kind of talk through some of the fundraising efforts, because this all kind of goes together. I know Barbara's been engaged here lately with them. So with that, over to Kimberly. Oh, and if I forgot anything, please fill it in.
All right. So Sugarland Legacy Foundation is engaged with fundraising. So far to date, we've raised about $2,200 through the avenues that we've done so far, which was, if you recall, we did sort of that day of giving. We've released some QR codes at the City of Sugarland, State of the City, and some of those. So we're starting to get some traction there. We met with the Legacy Foundation last month, and they were very excited about us starting this. I know that we've been kind of on hold for the fundraising for a little while, so they were really excited to be re-engaged. Barbara has presented to us internally some initial fundraising plans, which we'll then present to the Legacy Foundation later this month on the 19th, to kind of give them an idea. We kind of gave them a very broad overview, or here are the sorts of things that we're talking about, but we'll be continuing to work with them to activate those things and to work more towards our goal. Let's see. So we'll review the fundraising plan so that they can review and comment and provide their input. I think that, sort of what we talked with them, they're very in line with, so I don't think that there will be anything that they'll be like, oh, no, heck no. So they seemed really engaged and welcoming to any of that. So we'll be doing that. And then as they meet quarterly, so as we continue to progress with that, we'll just continue to update them on our progress. And one of the things that we're asking for them is, what part do y'all want? Do y'all want a more active role in this? Do y'all want to join our team in the fundraising? So that's all I have. Yes.
I will say, for State of the City, that we actually had a table out there. So in the lobby. So for those of you who haven't been, or so those of you who have been, the lobby is kind of this big networking area where a lot of people show up early for breakfast, but they're sitting around and talk and everything else. We actually had a table there.
We have a big.
And we actually had people just kind of asking Jennifer. I think Jennifer was there, Cindy was there, Barbara was there. And they were all just kind of asking about, Sugarland have a shelter, what are y'all doing? Those types of things. And then on the center pieces of the table, we actually had a QR codes for people to scan and donate. There was a part in the speech that the mayor and Mike gave that asked people to participate and pointed them to that. So I think that was very, very good. It was a good start. All right. To bring awareness to what we're trying to do and raise those dollars. So I don't know if Barbara, if you had anything else to report back. Oh, Dawn.
No, I was going to mention the cards that we have with the QR code. I know we didn't hand them all out, and so if any board members are interested in having the cards to hand off to people as you talk to them in the community, I know we have plenty left over that we could provide to whoever is interested.
I have stacks of them in my office and I was supposed to bring them today, but my brain is not working this morning in my office, but if you would like any to hand out, just let me know, make me give them to you.
Anybody have any questions for Kimberly, myself, or Dawn? Barbara.
Just saying.
Hey, Barbara, can you push your button? Because I cannot hear anything.
I'm really interested in whether they want to participate in a subcommittee, so that I know, as we move forward here, so we know whether to include whether that's going to be a group that includes them or a group with the people who signed up here.
So we'll definitely, at the upcoming meeting with them, we'll definitely broach that. We will ask them and they can respond however they want to be involved.
But they were truly, when we met with them the first time, they were very excited about getting rebooted and started up again on fundraising.
For my part, I sat with the chairman of the Legacy Foundation at the State of the City breakfast, and he was very gracious and very interested. He had a lot of questions. He said that their board would like to tour the shelter and learn more and be more engaged. So I took that as a very here know what was said to me. Okay, we will now move on to item A, review of and discussion on the animal shelter and community engagement program updates by Cindy King.
Good afternoon. The first thing I'm going to cover is going to be talking about the staffing updates. Clarence, do we have a mouse that I could get rid of the? Sorry, it's that. Can't see that on the slide. Oh, never mind. It's if I were looking at the slide, I could see that, okay? Goodness gracious. Sorry. It wasn't on the mouse pad, it was loose, just saying. Anyway, just want to start off with staffing updates. All right, so kennel techs, we do have one full-time position that's back in recruitment. We did hire a full-time and part-time kennel tech at a job fair in February. Unfortunately, the full-time position did not work out. After a day of work, she realized it was not a job for her. But we did have one that started that's working out really well. It's another Kayla. So it seems that Ashley and Kayla's are the names to have at our shelter right now. But we do have the full-time is back in recruitment, and then we do have two part-time positions in recruitment at this point. Our full-time vet tech, Leica, which I talked about last time, she did start on the 22nd of January, so we're fully staffed. With the two vet techs, we still do not have anything, any response from the part-time veterinarian. We haven't had any applications submitted, so we're going to continue to work with a contract vet that comes on site as we need. Our community program manager position is now posted for recruitment due to Natalie's resignation this last month. So that is a job posting that's out there right now. So continuing on with some training that we have been doing, January 22nd, 4 supervisors, including myself, started the behavior management certification course that's taught by Kelly Bolin. It's an 8-week course, and it's going to drive some operational procedure changes as we get through it. The class actually finishes on March 17th, so we're getting there. And we'll be updating processes and procedures based on the lessons learned from this. Additionally, we're going to have a lot of materials that we can utilize to train other staff and volunteers once we're done. As of this week, I have completed the shelter management certification course. It's 5 different 6 to 8 week modules. Started last April and literally put in my paper earlier this week. So I am now done with that class in completion. Ashley Kaspari and Katie Mott put together an animal CPR training that they presented to all staff. So it was just a quick hands-on. We actually have an animal there that we can use, but they ran through just some general CPR information for animals. And then Paige attended a cat training event this week and already has plans for training and more enrichment beyond what she's already implemented based on the Kelly Boland's class that we've been in. So she's already got a lot of new stuff out there, but we're going to have more to come. So far, we still have 100% success rate for our heartworm treatment dogs. And we have not just the ones in the shelter, but the ones that have responded to us 6 months post-treatment, and we're being able to check in on them. I think we got results today that Cinnamon today also has tested negative. So we just continue that what we're doing is working. One of our local vets, Dr. Janacek, is set up to come. She comes as a contractor for in-house care. She does the heartworm treatments. She comes once a month for 2 days in a row, does the heartworm treatments, in addition to doing rabies vaccinations for animals at that time, and also any other assessments that we need for animals that we're not having to send in. With that being said, we do have 3 additional dogs undergoing treatment, but we do have 1 dog that's heartworm positive that we're not going to be treating as heartworms. He's tagged in at 10 years old at least. Realistically, he's probably 12 to 15 years old. And after a conversation with Dr. Janacek, heartworms aren't going to be what take him out. It's going to be something to do with his rest of his body and his going on. So he's going to continue his doxycycline regimen, which is the antibiotic. And then he'll get his monthly preventative. So we won't be doing the injections on him. We just don't think for his quality of life, it's not the thing to do. So the rest of the dogs we'll be treating, but he is going to be one of the exceptions just based on his medical history and what he's got going on. And I'll share a little bit more about him in a minute. I just updated the heat maps for a couple of them. This is the animal control officer requested responses. We have 224 calls mapped for January and February, and that's an increase over time. They've been gradually increasing, but September and October, they were 160, and now we're up to, you can see that it's just continuing to increase. But what this does do is it's a pretty good visual on trends for our daytime calls. And this is where the feral cat and dog and the found cat and dogs are being located. Again, what we talked about before, this continues with the fact that they're typically off of the major roadways. These calls, it did increase in November and December, and they have come back down a little bit since then. These are our current numbers. We do have a dog in quarantine for kennel cough right now, which ties up housing area with another dog because we can't have another dog in there. We did have 1 kennel open up for officer intake Wednesday this week, sorry. But filled it with a dog that we confiscated in a case with police. So it's one of those that as soon as we have an opening, it's filling up. And this is the pattern we continue to see. We have gotten some dogs moved out through transfers, fosters, adoptions, and literally within 24 hours, we have no more space because we've gone out and we've picked up more dogs to fill any open kennels. So additionally, right now, the other thing we're having is we do have 2 dogs out in foster care. But they are coming back to us as owners go out of town and can't keep them. So we then have to figure out where to put them. So even though they are out on foster, they're not out on fosters that keep them all the time. So they do have to come back every now and then. So this just updates the number of dogs at the bottom. Like I said, as soon as we get the dogs out, officers are out and we have kennels open, officers are being called out and they're picking more animals up. So usually within the day or 24 hours, we're filling up the empty kennels. And just following up, on December 23rd, the Houston Press reported a national trend that's unfolding across several greater Houston area shelters as canine populations continue to climb and adoption rates are faltering. It's not just us, it's everywhere. This is what we keep talking about. December 27th, the Houston Chronicle shared multiple shelters and rescue groups are struggling. And the founder of Camo Rescue, they interviewed, said that 2023 was the worst she's seen in 30 years and doesn't see it coming to an end anytime soon. Just, as we continue to operate at this level, we're going to have people step up. It can't just be the city or the county taking care of these animals. People have to have some accountability, get pets spayed or neutered, which I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but pets spayed or neutered, but the community has to step up and help. This can't be just us. Especially these dogs that we've had for extended periods of time. I just want to share a few points that from an article from the Shelter Animal Count, which is a national database for shelters. It's no secret animal shelters across the county are in crisis. Nationally, shelters are in their 3rd year of too many animals and not enough adoptions, especially dogs. The data shows a 10% increase in intake compared to 2021, driven primarily by dogs. And then the non-live outcomes for many shelters, which means shelter euthanasia and death in care for dogs, is also on the rise. So non-live outcomes increased in 2022, it went up 31%. And in 2021, it went 85. It went up 85%. So I'd like to note that that's not us. So we're keeping these dogs long-term, but because we're keeping them long-term and our euthanasia rate is not happening, that means we have these dogs that we don't have space for other dogs because we have all the other dogs in the shelter. The stray intake continues to increase. It's 5% higher than 2022, and it's 23% higher than 2021. And at the same time, 3.5% fewer dogs will return to their owners compared to 2022. We were talking earlier, one of that is that owners are not redeeming their dogs in the numbers that they used to be. Dogs with tags and microchips are not being redeemed. We make repeated calls, emails, send certified letters, getting no response. People dump dogs with chips or collars or something like that, and they've got new numbers, they've moved, whatever the case may be, and they're not coming back and getting the dogs. We have several in the shelter right now. Yes, ma'am.
On your last comment, I just wanted to add that when our community that is interested in adopting comes to the shelter and they see the same dogs month after month, then they stop coming because they don't have hope that there's going to be other dogs that will be there. So we have these unadoptable dogs for whatever reason. People have decided not to adopt those 20 or however many are in our kennels. And then it also reduces foot traffic or people coming in to adopt because they are looking to see an influx of different kinds of animals in the shelter, and that doesn't happen.
Correct. So on Wednesday, February 14th, our vet tech arrived at work to find a mama cat and three approximate 4-month-old kittens in a carrier that literally was built for one cat. So mama and these three good-sized babies were out in the 43-degree weather. And we did determine that they'd been out there for about 2 hours because we have the cameras. So we were able to determine when he dumped them. And they were covered in feces. They were covered. They were soaking wet, and it was cold. We did track down the individual who dumped the cat and kittens. He has since received 18 citations of Sugar Land City ordinance violations. Our animal control staff has also been working, and I'm not sure where this one stands, but they were working with the county attorney's office to try and get state charges against the guy who dumped them. So we reported it at the last board meeting that we're not tolerating it. Hopefully somebody is going to start spreading the word. But I will say that one of the things that we have heard is it's just a citation. So but I think that this last gentleman was like, it's a citation. So it didn't have the teeth that we need, but these aren't Sugar Land residents that are dumping at our shelter. They have not been. These last that we have done, we've been able to catch, they're not Sugar Land residents. So it's not the neighbors, it's the neighboring areas.
Cindy, I know the name of the dog, but I won't say it. Did we pursue anything on the gentleman that left the dog attached to the fence?
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's a citation. It's a citation. Yeah. Yes, Cadet, the one we named Cadet was the one, he was in the same situation. He was dumped middle of the day. So, and that was the video I think I showed, or the slide I showed last month. So, I've narrowed this down. I had been reporting 22 data and 23 data, so I've backed it off. But these are our dog intakes, and yes, our dog intakes have gone down, but that is because we are not taking in dogs when we don't have space for them. Before, we were putting them in the outside kennels, which means we could physically have 40 dogs with 20 of them on the inside and 20 of them on the outside. The problem we have with that is when the weather gets bad, we have absolutely nowhere to put those dogs. Or we leave them out in the elements, and that's not what our option is for that. So our outcomes still don't match our intakes, so we've got to make sure to get more outcomes. And that's just a drill down, just a deeper dive. You know, we don't have rescues that are available. Rescue groups are all full also. So we don't have many to go, and then we're not seeing the adoption traffic. January was amazing for us. We had a bunch of them, 9 of them go out in like 3 days, and it was amazing. And most of them actually, I think we had 8 adoptions. So out of them, most of them got adopted. And it was a really short time period, and it made us feel so much better, but then it's faltered back off again. So we were hoping it was like a new trend, but it was an anomaly. And so, excuse me, cat data. The cat intakes are down regionally. Dr. Bender and I were just talking about it during lunch. Same thing as they were last year, this time of the all just not a whole lot coming in. We know we're preparing for cat season or kitten season. So, but all the other managers in the area are reporting the same thing. So we have some adult cats. We also have some working cats. So if any of y'all know of anybody that has property, we have some cats that really need to get out of the shelter and onto a farm or into a barn or something like that, because they're very, very unhappy and they're very fearful where they are. So anybody that knows somebody that has land and would be willing to do that, I think we have like 6 of them at this point. So we're really looking for those, because we don't have many adoptable cats because we just don't have many cats, period, right now, which is okay. And then a deeper drill down on cats seem to go out pretty easily and pretty quickly. I think it's part of it. They're easy to care for. You can leave them for a weekend and it's no big deal, but. So our TNR pilot program update, we're up to 37 cats or kittens that have been trapped. 18 of them were the cats that were spayed or neutered, vaccinated and returned. Of the kittens, 13 of them were adopted out. 3 were transferred to Austin. 2 were transferred to Houston Pets Alive. And based on what Nancy has captured, she believes that there are 2 females and 1 male left. So the big impact will be seen this year, and that they won't have all the multitudes of cats having kittens. But we will probably still see a few out of that litter, since she knows she has two females with the males still out there. So we do have a grant from Best Friends as we're working on the TNR program. February 28th, we met with several local vets to start that program development, or to continue that program development. We will also be talking with Dr. Bender further on that. She wasn't available that day, so we'll be having follow-up conversations with her. So it looks like we'll probably have at least a total of 4 vets in the area that are interested in helping out with that TNR program. And we are working on the ordinance update, which I'm going to let Jennifer talk about before I continue.
Let's see if I can. Yeah. I'm gonna skip slides because I have them in the wrong place. All right, so you all got a copy of the draft ordinance number 2330. And so this ordinance is what, first of all, will help us to establish our community cat program. That will, once we pass this ordinance, that will allow us to get the second installment of our grant from Best Friends, of the 5,000 additional funds from them. We're putting together kitten kits, but 8,000 of the grant is to be used for the TNR, and then 2,000 for the kitten kits. So the idea is we do want our caretakers to register the colony, just so that we know where they are and who's taking care of them. And then that way we're not associating that caretaker as an owner. So the ordinance is clear that that registered caretaker is not considered an owner. And then they're not subject to the animal limits that we have in the ordinance. The other things that the ordinance does is it will establish a minimum standard of care. This has come up with a pet store in the area, or any kennels. They have, it establishes the minimum standards of how they have to care for those animals, the fact that they have to have separate areas for any animals who are ill. And they have on outdoor animals, they have to have a structurally sound shelter that is specific to the species of animal, with sufficient space for the animal to turn about freely, is easily sit, stand, or lie in a comfortable natural position. Has to protect the animal from inclement weather and be regularly cleaned to prevent accumulation of waste. And then providing sufficient food and sufficient clean, fresh water and veterinary care. So those are the minimum standards that would be providing for animals. And then on page 7, section C, if the owner is a pet shop or rescue organization sheltering more than one animal, they have to have a designated and isolated area for any ill animals. And so hopefully this will address some of the issues, some of the calls that we've been getting for pet store where they felt like the animals were not being well cared for or were ill. We basically didn't have anything to be able to address it. Yes, sir.
Have you had any input from small pet stores that may have difficulty having a separate area to isolate ill animals and where their physical premises doesn't let them comply with the rule?
We have not, but if they have ill animals, I mean, they shouldn't be commingling them with healthy animals. They need to be either at, a vet or in isolation, not in the store. And so the idea here is we don't want them commingling. And it's not that hard. They just have to have them basically in a separate kennel or separate, cubicle area. Doesn't have to be like whole different room, anything like that.
Yeah, in reading the draft ordinance, it was not clear on exactly what arrangement would comply.
Yeah.
And some of the big stores, I think, would have no difficulty, but some smaller pet stores might, and I don't know how we can get input from them or an explanation to them or exactly what they have to do to meet the standard. I'm sure a lot of them would try to do it if they could, but they're no doubt having small physical spaces available to them.
Meredith, did you want to say something?
Sure. This is taken from multiple different cities and has been looked at by several prosecutors. There is not a set distance requirement, because it's written by lawyers, not veterinarians. And we don't know the different distances you need depending on what the disease may be. It could be 5 feet, could be 50 feet if it's airborne. We don't know. And rather than trying to spell that out for every specific disease and get it wrong, like several attorneys know, veterinarians, we wanted to allow some flexibility on a case-by-case basis. So if we go to a veterinarian, they say, okay, for this particular disease, 2 feet is sufficient. For this particular, you've got to be in a completely different building because your AC is going to spread it to everybody. So we did want some flexibility to address it based on what the illness was.
Okay, I just am concerned that the pet store owners might want to know in advance what they can do to avoid a violation by being prepared with X amount of space or whatever. It just wasn't clear that it would operate other than on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We can have an educational material put together that our field officers can share with.
Now, I don't own the pet store, but I would think that there are many small ones that might want an opportunity to input if they know that there's even an issue.
Yeah, there's only one that I'm aware of in the city. Generally, we're not looking for their input on the ordinances. We're looking at the best, what's the best outcome for the animals, what's in their best interest.
Yep.
All right, so then I'm gonna kind of jump around a little bit, just for the way that the slides were organized. At the very back, I think it's the last section, impoundment of animals. If we impound an animal, so it's on page 16. We actually have set a fee, and that fee is at the beginning, but if we impound an animal and there's a requirement for that animal to be sterilized. If we perform the surgery or have a vet perform the surgery, then we're setting a fee for the city to get reimbursed for that when the animal is reclaimed through the impoundment. So unless they have a letter that says, that the animal can't be spayed or neutered for some reason, or if it's less than 6 months old. So that would be part of the impoundment fee. So we don't have a fee specified because we don't know what the cost would be. We would just pass along whatever our direct cost is from the veterinarian. All right, so then a big part of this ordinance is addressing aggressive animals. And this is something where Meredith and her staffs and her prosecutors spent quite a bit of time working with attorneys in other cities on how to word this for it to be defensible or hold up in court. And so we are separating out dangerous dogs from aggressive animals. So section 336 would apply to dangerous dogs, and how what the enclosures have to be, how we have to transport the dogs, signage that has to be in place in order for someone to keep a dog that has been declared dangerous. They have to register the dog with us and pay a dangerous dog registration fee, as well as meeting insurance requirements for liability insurance in case the dog injures one. And then section 338 is designation of an aggressive animal and the appeal process. And so this would set out the process for if we are notified of an unprovoked attack on an animal to a person that causes serious injury or death. Here's the process that we have to follow. Person or an animal. Okay, you probably should talk about this because you know more about it than I do. But Cindy and Mike, our field services supervisor, worked with legal to make sure we have these processes. So it's about 3 pages, 3 or 4 pages just on the aggressive animals and the processes that we have to follow when we would impound the animal and the registration, the appeal process. So I'm obviously not going to read 4 pages of stuff to you, but that's what the majority of that from starting on page 11 to about page 14, or starts on page 10 actually, through page 14 is all about aggressive animals. And then on page 14 is talking about investigation of bite or scratch incidents. And so in this case, we are setting a standard for how we evaluate dog bites using the Dunbar scale. I couldn't remember the name. I had it right here, the Dunbar bite scale. And so it gives us a standard for how we assess the bite wounds. We would then investigate at a level 2 or higher bite. And so it's just cleaning up that language for it to be a little more specific than it was previously. So are there any questions on the ordinance before I go on to what the process would be?
I have a question.
Yes.
On page 7. Sorry, I have a question on page 7, section 329, transportation of animals in trucks.
Mhm.
So this is something that we've seen come through, at least come through the city.
Okay.
So are we saying here that as long as they're not going 35 miles per hour, that it is allowed?
That is the current code. Yeah, so that is not changing.
And
And I believe that quote is consistent with state law.
okay, and so then when I guess we would expect that there would be police officers who maybe would be tracking speed to determine whether that is
Yeah, that would be the only way we would be able to issue any kind of citation. I think the PD would be the main enforcer of this provision.
Thank you.
Yeah, it makes me so mad to see people driving down with dogs loose in the bed of a truck. So,
Hey, Jennifer,
yes.
is there some way to know on here which are state regulations and what we are doing as a city
Mhm.
to, basically take it one step further to protect our animals? Is there some way on this that you can tell which is state?
I'll let
and
Meredith
which is
address
ours?
that. But generally we say, like, for example, on page 9, on dangerous dogs, we say this section applies to the extent that it's more stringent than the Texas Health and Safety Code. But I'll let you address if there's anything else.
I'd be happy to have a draft ready for your next meeting, labeling specifically which sections apply. I can tell you about half of this is almost verbatim from state law, because the prosecutors are very particular on wanting to make sure that when they do get a case, they can fully prosecute it.
That would be great.
And I'd be happy to mark it up for you.
Yeah, just for reference. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't have this electronically, so I can't do a word search, but there was at least several places that talk about humane euthanization.
Yes.
We spent a lot of time last year developing a Sugar Land euthanization policy and procedures. There seems to be at least some areas where there's a conflict between what's in this proposal and in what we had adopted there. And I think that we need to resolve those conflicts to be consistent with the policy that we adopted.
Okay.
There's some ability to approve of euthanization due to space capacity limitations, which is something that directly conflicts with our policy. And again, in section, what is it? 345. Looks like there's several cases where it might. It's not the right thing to do, in my opinion, and it conflicts with what we've spent a long time talking about. And I'd be happy to talk with city council or you or whomever with my concerns about that, but I don't want it to go forward the way it is.
This is how it's already written.
Mhm.
This isn't changed. This is, I understand, this is not a change. This is how it is already in ordinance.
It may be,
We use the policy to govern.
But we use the policy how we do it.
yeah.
That's one of the, I mean, that's one of the things as far as process and procedures. That is one of the things that will be updated based on information we have from, the training we have been doing.
Well, we can talk about it a little more later, but again, I don't know what the status of this draft ordinance is and what is proposed to be done with it. And so I'd like to be clear on that before we leave today.
Okay, so I can address that now. So the status of the ordinance is, my plan was if we have a majority of the board willing to, is supportive of this, I'd like to bring it forward to city council on March 19th for first reading, which that gives us some time to work through. If we have any kind of revisions that we want to incorporate, we can get that incorporated before that agenda gets posted. Then we would address any questions that city council has and bring the final version for second reading on April 2nd. After that, we have to publish a descriptive caption in the newspaper in order for us to be able to enact the $500 fine for a violation of these provisions.
Well, I found it difficult to find the time available in the few days that we had to look at 22 pages. To not only read it, but to give time enough to consider what it says and what the changes are proposed to be, and you arrange some comments. So, and given the limited amount of time, I think I'm not quite prepared to vote for it.
Okay. So the reason that, and I do apologize for the short turnaround, we wanted to get this in front of you as soon as we could. And we were still working through some of the language on the aggressive animals. So that's what held up. What you're getting is the entire section of the code rather than just the snippets of what's changing. That way we can make sure that the wording is consistent throughout, that we're not dropping any sections in the code. And so there is a lot here. I did send out the highlighted version, and I sent you a red line markup version with the insertions and deletions. But a lot of this we're not changing what's currently there. And so that was the idea there. And so I wanted to really talk about today of, what are the changes? And as far as the euthanasia provisions goes, the only change on that page is that as far as any nursing neonates, that we would only. And obviously this will be a very last resort is if we couldn't find a foster. For them, and so that would be the only time that we would even have to consider that, but most of the time. Staff ends up taking the animals home, before we, so that we can find a foster, so. Yeah, it's a last resort, and it's not something that we would want to do.
I didn't understand that we were restricted from suggesting further changes.
Oh, you're not,
If they are appropriate, and I was trying to highlight some that came to my
Okay.
mind. I know I spent a little time on that issue last year. I'd like to see whether it's existing language or new language. I'd not like to find a conflict.
okay, well, I'm happy to work with you further, on any other input that you may have. Before we do anything with it. We were wanting to get this in place so that we could move forward with the next steps of the community CAP program. That was kind of the what's pushing us for getting this done because it's almost kitten season. Any other questions?
Jennifer, for clarification, is this moving forward on the 19th or are you holding it?
Can we poll the board? If we have consensus to move forward with, the ordinance on the 19th, I'll work with John on the implements that he has.
And keep in mind that revisions can be made up until second reading.
Yes, so basically we have a whole nother month almost.
Yes, ma'am.
And what happens on the 19th?
So the first reading of the ordinance would go to city council for consideration. I would give them an overview, or Cindy will, she's much more versed in the language than I am. Would give an overview, of the ordinance and, there would be a opportunity for public input at that time as well. Any public comment, to city council, on the ordinance. So if you wanted to, if you needed to, felt like you wanted to address city council, you could do that at that time as well.
When would we expect the second reading to take place?
I tentatively, April 2nd, but if we needed to delay it to the 16th, we could.
Because we're not meeting until May again, right? So
Right.
that does any good.
Right, so I mean, we could have another meeting in April if we needed to. If you wanted to have a
Or the end of
special
March.
meeting, or at the end of March, we could do that as well.
Is there any way to move the first reading to April 2nd to give us almost a month to actually review it?
We won't hit kitten season by then. I mean, that will put us already inundated at that point.
It'll put us into what?
Is there any way that we can separate? I mean, there's two goals here, obviously, to address, push the TNR changes to the ordinance. And then also we want to address any, of course, conflicts with the humane euthanasia. We've already changed, we spent copious amount of time changing the shelter policy, which at the end of the day is what's most important because that's what they're acting on. The city ordinance may expand and give them more options, but at the end of the day, they've chose to not, pursue those options in current policy. So to me, that is not as pressing as pushing the TNR ordinance because we're going into kitten season. We're expecting, hundreds, thousands of kittens to be born, at least within this, I'm not exaggerating, within the city. So I'm not saying, ignore this completely and let's forget about it, but, perhaps let's, focus on getting this passed for the TNR agenda and then look back later on changing for the humane euthanasia, updated so that it can be updated and brought, to agree with and align completely with the shelter policy. I agree. The language should, all match and be coordinated, but I think we would all need more time for that as well to go over that. But I think we need to focus mainly on getting the TNR ball rolling that we've been working on for over a year now.
And I think,
I don't actually have that in
The TNR, yes, we have it. So right now we're operating under a pilot program. Because currently it's not allowed by ordinance. And so in order to get this program going and be able to expand it to other parts of the city, we need this ordinance passed. I do want to comment though on the humane euthanasia. This is just what's allowed. Any revisions to this, basically it's saying, you know, after 72 hours for unidentified stray or 5 days, 120 hours. If they have a current registration, it's just saying at that point, it becomes our property to either adopt out. If it needs to be euthanized, we could euthanize it at that point. If it needs to be adopted, if it needs to go to a rescue. And so it's just saying we take ownership of that animal at that point. It doesn't say we will euthanize it. If you take it to another point where you tie our hands and say we can't euthanize it, we move towards that no kill status, then we have more problems to deal with. So, okay, I just wanted to clarify. So, I mean, I just want to say, you know, this is the current language. We could explore, you know, further down the road if you wanted to make revisions to it. Yes. Okay, then I'll get with you offline then and we'll work into.
As long as approval now to go forward to the first reading. Doesn't imply that we sign off on everything that's there, and we still have the ability to suggest changes.
Yes.
Which could be brought up at the time of the second reading, is that correct?
Up until the second reading, yes. Which we would post that agenda the Friday before, so basically Good Friday or the Thursday, the 28th, we would post it.
If we're skipping till May, that would perhaps cause a problem. Maybe we need to do something that gets us together again, House or briefly prior to the second reading.
It can be, yeah, and we could do a virtual meeting if we need to, or just a quick, yeah.
So the main push is just to get the TNR language in, really is why we're pushing it.
Yes.
To get, it's not the rest of that stuff to get the money.
Right.
So then the question was, or the directive was, can we take a poll of the board and determine if we would be comfortable
With us bringing this
with
forward.
bringing it the first reading on March 19th. With the caveat that we will schedule a meeting prior to April 2nd, or actually prior to March 28th, which is the advertising date of the April 2nd meeting, to address additional clarifications. Does that sound like what we've just said and agreed to?
I think so.
Okay.
So if you all are comfortable with it, we could even say like March 21st, which is 2 weeks from today. We could schedule a special meeting to come back together. You'll give me your feedback on any language that you're not comfortable with, and then I'll work with Meredith to come up with the final draft that we would bring forward for second reading.
Okay, so then.
Oh, you said 22nd. Yeah, today's the 8th. I should know this.
What day are you?
Friday.
2 weeks from today, if that works.
Okay, so then. The question to us is, do we feel comfortable having this submitted to council for a first reading on March 19th? Provided we have a meeting on the 22nd to review additional clarifications. And could I have a show of hands or a yay, or do we want to show if who's comfortable and who isn't? Are we?
I'm comfortable.
Okay, all right.
And if you have any language changes that really feel like that we could even potentially get them into the first reading. If, we're that strongly, we feel that strongly about it.
So then Jennifer, that was all members who are present were.
Yes, thank you.
All right, following through on that, we're going to, we have our monthly reports up here. With the fact that, and you can't see it with the screen down here. The save rate for January, the cats was 92%, the dogs was 76%, and the overall was 82%. And then for February, cats was 90%, the dogs were 73%, and the overall is 80%. So just as an example, just having one dog that had to be euthanized brought our numbers down for dogs. And in February, this particular dog was brought to us with a completely broken lower mandible. And I'm talking the fact that it was hanging, it was completely broken, and it did have to be euthanized. But because we had to do an intake on it and it became our dog, it counts as our numbers. So, just so y'all know that, 73 is below what people like to see. But it had to happen. It wasn't an option. So just following up on our microchip program, it continues to be pushing along. We did start publicizing the availability on social media in January, and we immediately got a huge response to it. Many of them that were coming in had multiple animals that are coming into the shelter to get microchipped. We did have 42 that came in January. We only had 12 in February, and to date, we've already had 3 this month. We are going to continue to promote it. I've asked Jenny to promote it every couple of weeks just to keep that continued interest in it. There's no requirements of residency. You just need to have a dog or cat to microchip. Has to be handleable by us to be microchipped. And we're going to continue until we run out.
Are these, just out of curiosity, are these microchips being also entered into our database and Chameleon as well?
Yes.
Okay, so we're registering.
So
the
we
chip.
register, we actually create a PID for the owner. We create an AID for every animal, and we register them with 24-hour pet watch. Personally, we do that process because what we learned, and we actually do it for all of our dogs now. We complete the 24 pet watch registration because what we found was we actually had one dog. We've had several that we've gotten phone calls on, but we had one dog that got dumped in the city of Houston. The owner had never registered it to themselves. They registered it to us. It was registered to us. They never registered it to themselves. So therefore she came back to us because they never took over the registration. So now we do that process. So if a dog is found, they're the ones that get contacted and not us for once they get adopted out. So it's internally, but also for that process. So I have a couple of medical updates. One is Moon Pie was reevaluated by Dr. Janacek and has talked about the fact that if she goes on, she can have pain management without the surgery. She's not going to be somebody's running buddy. If we can't find that foster to take her for the surgery, that's instead of us having to put her down, that was, it's going to have to be somebody that adopts her that knows that that's the case. We do also have 2 special needs dogs currently in the shelter. Again, I talked about Eeyore a little bit earlier. Super, super sweet old man pictured here in the middle. At least 10, probably closer to 12, 15, and that 15 is probably closer. He's just a big old lab that needs a quiet, relaxing environment for whatever time he has remaining. He's super sweet. He's super docile. He's a couch potato. He can't do anything with his arthritis. And as I mentioned earlier, he's heartworm positive, arthritic. He's improving every day for us. He was extremely thin when we got him. When they went to do surgery, they realized he actually had a stick embedded in his under his tongue. So because we couldn't get him to eat. And so they removed the stick during surgery. He's been on antibiotics. He's gained 3 pounds within 4 days. So he's making tremendous strides as far as that goes, but he's gonna be a special needs dog that just needs somebody who's got a nice place, quiet place for him to relax and live out the rest of whatever little bit of life he has. And then Malbec is going to be on the opposite end of the spectrum as far as age. She's a super sweet. She's about 10 months old probably, but we've learned she's got some type of congenital heart condition. So we don't know if she's going to live 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, don't know. But we do know that she has ongoing issues due to her heart condition. So we just got a couple of those special needs dogs that we're looking for some just the right home for right now. So this picture, I'm going to touch a little bit on it later, but I wanted to add it here because they did help it as far as the shelter. But we have a freshly painted ramp that they're standing in front of, and we have the rooms in Whiskerville freshly painted, thanks to Fort Bend Christian Academy that partnered with us during their Eagle Week again this year. Last year they painted the adoption room. So this year they came back and they continued on helping us out. So now I'm going to cover, does anybody have any questions on operations up to that point? All right, I'm going to go ahead and continue with the community engagement portion of this. So big news was Bogart was in our care for 1,040 days before he found his forever home. I'm sorry that Jenna's not here, but it is Jenna and her family that ended up being his forever home. So that was one of our big successes. She actually reached out to me at the end of the last board meeting and it moved forward from there. So that's awesome. Max and Jackie Chan, for those that were around, they weren't with us that long. However, theirs was a story where their owner's house flooded. I don't know, a pipe burst or something, but their house flooded. They had to moved to Tennessee because that's the only place they had family. The dogs got lost in transit. They were finally able to move back to the state and readopt them about 3 months later. We had told them that we couldn't hold them, but they did come through and they were still there. So they did readopt their dogs. Kiki, who some of you may or may not have seen, he found his forever home with a volunteer's family in Kansas. And he has actually improved wonderfully medically because of the weather. So Kiki had horrible skin conditions. He had yeast infections, his skin, his ears, everything. And he's already clearing up because he's not in this nice, warm, humid climate here. So he's already doing great. And then, of course, Sammy, transported. Sammy was 826 days in our care, 8 failed sleepovers, and he is now living a life of luxury at Whispering Willows Senior Dog Sanctuary. Kudos to Yenny Rivas for sticking with this and making it happen. There was so much background work that had to happen. I think it was like 8 pages of application work that she had to do. There was continuous communication with the sanctuary. And it was definitely a process to get that there. But Yenny and then Amy also drove both Kiki and Sammy to their destinations in Missouri and Kansas. So they took them and got them into their new homes.
Can I also add that the Whispering Willow Senior Dog Sanctuary, if you try to go follow them on Facebook or Instagram, they keep, I think they say 50 plus seniors, and it's hospice basically is what it is. And it's really cute to see all these little dogs running around and a few big dogs. But because what they have is hospice dogs, they do all their own vet work, they do their own blood work, everything. So they are always asking for money. So please be generous if you want to send them some money. Tell them it's for Sammy or in honor of Sammy. They would love it.
All right, continuing on with our partnerships, Best Friends really stepped up for us again recently. They sent staff over to help with afternoon cleaning and dog walking on February 13th so that our staff was able to attend the memorial service for Joe Ponte. And then February 24th, they came back and they did shelter takeover day along with helping host the kitten shower. So they helped us prep for our upcoming kitten season. So we got some food, some other things that we had on our wish list taken care of from that. And then following up on the Fort Bend Christian Academy Eagle Week, for those of you that don't know, the students are out of school. It's not their spring break. It's a week of service. So they have to go and work on service projects around town. Again, they painted our ramp and both exit stairs in Whiskerville. And then additionally, they painted the back rooms of Whiskerville, which because of our low cat inventory, we were actually able to paint the rooms without it affecting the fumes affecting the cats. So the timing was perfect on it and it worked out great and it looks great. I showed Paige and I walked in this morning. The room looks huge because it's not those neon greens and oranges and yellows anymore. So it's white. It's just bright white right now. Yenny worked with both our police and fire departments to do some photo shoots with some of our dogs. Which the fire and police departments both shared them on the social media, just trying to get some traction to get some of the recognition that we have the dogs out there. So that y'all should have seen some of those out on social media. And then as Rob alluded to earlier, February 23rd, we debuted our new branding with our backdrop and tablecloth at Sugar Land State of the City. If you've not read, and he stole my thunder completely on this. If you haven't viewed the recording of it, you should. The shelter is one of the topics highlighted as leadership, as our city leadership addresses things to come for Sugar Land. So they did, like I said, they did talk about us and the new shelter, so. Cambry Girardi reached out to us in January as she had selected our shelter as the recipient of her Eagle Spout project. She had worked at the shelter through the Fort Bend Christian Academy Eagle Week previously. But what she did was she came and she built 25 Corunda beds. So the beds that you see are the ones that she physically built for the comfort of our dogs. Additionally, she brought lots of bags of donations off of our Amazon wish list and does plan to bring in her whole troop, which actually ranges from 11 to 18, I think, to do some service projects around the shelter for us. So yeah, but we have 25 new beds for our animals, for our dogs with that. So what do you do when you have hundreds of stuffed animals donated to the shelter? You reach back out to one of the partners you've worked with before and provide them with reading buddies for their students. St. Lawrence has done cat and dog food drives for us where they literally ask their families to donate to dog food and cat food and have been very generous with us with that. Plus I had worked with them through the fire department side of it. And 2 years ago when the shelter got donations, and I am talking 2 years ago, we had literally 1,000 stuffed animals. But at that point we've reached out and in my relationship with them, I had I found a program, it's Reading Buddies. So essentially that year, they had enough over spring break that every kinder, first and second child got to take home a reading buddy for spring break. But we didn't have that many this year. But we did still, they were still excited to get them. So we will continue with that because our animals can only do so much, and the stuffed animals, they just shred anyway. It's just, I love the partnership, so. As we kick off our capital campaign for the new shelter, we did get an opportunity to do some advertising in the Houston Astros Game Day magazine. This is going to run in the magazine throughout the season. So it's a 1/4-page advertisement, and it has the QR code on it. One thing that you can't see on the video is that it also has just the website link if you want to go look at Adoptable Pets. Yenny took Rue out the last week to Brazos Bend Elementary Career Day, and he did amazing with the kids. However, it really tuckered him out. So he was absolutely out. She showed me video of trying to get him to walk out, and he was quite content sitting right where he was. So he had a good day that day. So. And yeah, and he is adopted as of today, or 2:00 today. So, so just a couple of quick upcoming events. Ann Sullivan Elementary has invited us out for Career Day on the 30th. Additionally, one of their student council members reached out to us. I believe he's a 5th grader, and he does a donation drive, or the student council does a donation drive at the end of April, early May. And then they're going to be, after their donation drive, they'll come to the shelter on the 13th to present the donations that they have. And then lastly, the rest of the upcoming events this weekend, there is an adoption event at Lazy Dog in Stafford. We're going to have 4 dogs at the event. Raising Cane's has again reached out and will be donating proceeds from their plush puppy program for us. Once they're complete with that program, the staff will also come by and do several hours of a service project of our need at that time. On April 6th, we're hosting Houston Pet Set Microchip and Vaccine Clinic at T.E. Harmon Center. Houston Pet Set is providing all the supplies, all the vaccines, all the staff. We're just providing the location and advertising it. They're doing it here in the city. And then appointments are required. Signups will be open 2 weeks before the event, and that is on the Houston Pet Set website, not ours, but the Houston Pet Set website. And lastly, I don't have this on the slides, but in April, we're going to be teaming up with Space Cowboys for Bark in the Park night. We haven't worked out the logistics yet, but on April 17th, we'll have several dogs out for the game that families can borrow for the night to go and participate in Bark in the Park, with the hope that someone's going to pick up one for their family that they fall in love with that evening and decide that that's one they want to keep and take home. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Cindy, can you elaborate on what it's taking to fill the community engagement manager position? Like what you need that position to have, and if it's difficult to fill that position or challenges in filling that position? Because it's open, right?
It is open. The application is open online.
Really just, and because
It's finding the right fit.
finding the right fit, we need someone with experience with networking with the rescues, and the other shelters, and setting up events, scheduling events, and really finding those partners in the community. And this position also would supervise Yenny and Ashley.
The administration side, administration
Experience
side.
managing budgets. Yeah, I mean, minimal, but I mean, not like we have a ton of money working on that, but yeah, like I'm still here, to oversee the budget and everything. I'll be responsible for that. But yeah, so it is posted until filled. It's currently up on the website. No other questions? I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
And at this time, we will move on to item number 5, Director's Report with Jennifer Brown.
Okay. Since I was directed that this is a report only, so and no discussion, so I would move the ordinance stuff up into the workshop piece. So I just want to touch on a couple of things, and I kind of already addressed where we're at with Best Friends on their life-saving grant. We completed all the training with Best Friends. We are meeting with them monthly, and they did have a lot of input onto the TNR ordinance. And as soon as we get that ordinance approved, then they will issue us the second payment of that grant. And then let me go here. So it's almost egret mating season. And so if you're not familiar, egrets are migratory birds. They are protected by the Bird Treaty Act of 1918, Migratory Bird Treaty Act, something like that. Once they nest, we can't disturb them, but they really like the Edgewater, Lakes of Edgewater area. We have had big issues with them in the past with really like hundreds of them nesting there. There are bird droppings everywhere in the streets and the sidewalks. To the point that we've had to go in and pressure wash the streets to clean it up because it just really became disgusting. We picked up a couple hundred birds, I think, last year, deceased birds. And they're just, you know, they nest, then once they the nest, the eggs hatch, the babies are just, they're just not bright. They fall out of the nest, they get hit by cars, they're in the road, they don't move. So in discussions with Nicole Solis and Herc Meyer, Herc came up with the idea of, well, why don't we just fly a drone through there? You know, we could have it look like a predatory bird. We've had discussions with the HOA there. And you know, the typical, you know, trim the trees back, put, you know, deterrents in the trees so that they're afraid of it, like the whirly things and the eyes. And the HOA kind of like said no to some of that stuff. But so we have sent out a preliminary messaging to the HOA rep. But what we're going to do, and I talked with Trevor yesterday, we're going to do a pilot and have our drone pilots fly, and they need to practice flying, get a certain number of hours flying. So they're going to fly their drones through that area and see if they can have an impact on the birds to help discourage them from nesting there. We have some meetings set up next week with vendors. There are a couple of vendors that actually sell these drones that are targeted at bird control. Typically they use it for farming operations to kind of keep they do like, they can have pre-programmed routes that they fly a couple times a day to try to keep the birds away from the crops. We have a call Monday with a company from the Netherlands. Another one was in, I think it's Spain, and then there was one in the US. So I'm working with Data and Innovation on this pilot. So I will have we have a meeting with the HOA representatives on the 21st, next 2 weeks, Thursday. And so I'm going to share that message with them. Hopefully we'll have some good test runs in, but the idea is to get those drones out there quickly before the birds nest, because once they've nested, we can't disturb them. So this is one of those like ideas that just came up and we want to try to implement a pilot quickly.
Have you
Yes.
discussed this at all with Texas Parks and Wildlife and see if that's violating any sort of protective thing on these birds?
We did run it by our legal counsel. She's very familiar with the Migratory Bird Act. That is what would be the governing act on it, as well as any regulations around flying drones.
They may have some other ideas too, if somebody would hurt.
I'm learning.
Reach out to them, so.
And I really.
So
wish
their
that-
ideas actually are the things like having balloons, having streamers and the things that the HOA doesn't allow. So that,
won't recommend balloons because balloons are detrimental.
not your standard balloon, but a type, that type of
Have like a
object.
big eye.
Yeah. But
visual.
then the other thing is they're not protected. I mean, they're protected, but as long as you deter them from nesting, once they nest, we're not doing the drones.
The idea is to fly it through in the mornings and evenings to where they think, oh, this is not a good area, there's a predator here that might hurt my nest, so I'll let you know how that goes. That's where we're trying out that pilot. And then an update on the donations fund, and these numbers did change since I sent the draft out. Earlier this week, we received a $1,000 donation, yesterday, I think it got posted, so I think it came in on Wednesday. So we're up to $14,470 in donations. We've earned $3,813 in interest income, and then we've got our $5,000 in grant revenue. So we've already exceeded our projected revenue for the year. Of course, we don't really budget for much. I mean, the donations are what they are. And then, so we have, with our carryovers, we have budgeted $105,000. So we originally budgeted around $90,000. And year to date, we have $27,933 spent or encumbered, and that includes the Astros game day ad. So we ended last year with almost 174,000 in the fund. And based on where we're at with the budget, we would have about 85,000 left if we spend it all. Right now, we have a balance of 169,000. And in the new shelter donations fund with the including the 100,000 that we got from the hunters, which is going to be targeted toward the intake building, we have 129,000. And I'm not sure if I captured all of the donations that came in through the Legacy Foundation just yet. So all right, so then our future meeting schedule with the March 22nd special meeting built in, we'll have that, and then our next meeting will be May 10th and July 12th. And that is all I have. I guess I need to take the questions thing off of this slide because apparently we're not allowed to ask questions during this section.
If there are no questions, then do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I make a motion.
We are adjourned. Thank you.